They don't storm the palace on day one. They don't always arrive in tanks. Sometimes they arrive in suits, smiling for cameras, shaking hands, promising stability. A nation is anxious. Prices are rising. Jobs are disappearing. Political parties are fighting each other while ordinary people feel ignored. In that tension, a voice rises above the noise, clear, confident, certain. That is often where the story of a dictator truly begins. This is the pattern behind every dictator's rise to power explained. Dictators are rarely born in times of peace and prosperity. They emerge from crisis, economic collapse, national humiliation, social unrest, war, or deep political paralysis create a vacuum. People lose trust in institutions. Democracy feels slow, chaotic, ineffective. In those moments, the promise of order becomes seductive. But the future feels uncertain, and uncertainty breeds fear. A skilled political operator understands this fear and gives it direction. He identifies the problem, names the enemy, and offers himself as the solution. After World War I, Germany was humiliated and economically devastated. The Treaty of Versailles crippled its economy and wounded its national pride. Inflation spiraled out of control. Savings became worthless. Families struggled to survive. Into this environment stepped Adolf Hitler. He did not begin as a ruler. He began as a speaker in small halls, addressing crowds who felt betrayed and angry. He told them their suffering was not random. It was caused by enemies, internal and external. He promised restoration, strength, and unity. His rise was not immediate, but it was methodical. This pattern repeats across history. And after World War I, Italy faced instability, unemployment, and fear of socialist revolution. Benito Mussolini presented himself as the man who could restore order and national greatness. He organized paramilitary groups, projected strength, and exploited political paralysis. Elites believed they could control him. They were wrong. Once in power, he dismantled the very system that had elevated him. In Spain, political polarization and violence escalated into civil war. Francisco Franco did not rely on elections. He relied on force. The Spanish Civil War became his pathway to absolute control. When the conflict ended, democracy did not return. Instead, a long dictatorship took root, justified by claims of national salvation and stability. Despite different contexts, the architecture of authoritarian rise shares common foundations. First comes crisis, then comes narrative. The aspiring dictator simplifies complex realities into a moral drama. We are under threat. I alone can fix it. This message is powerful because it transforms chaos into clarity. It offers dignity to those who feel ignored. It transforms frustration into loyalty. Charisma plays a crucial role. Many aspiring dictators are skilled orators. They understand symbolism, spectacle, and emotion. Massive rallies, uniforms, flags, choreographed displays of unity. These are not accidental. They are psychological tools. They create belonging. They make individuals feel part of something larger and historic. The leader becomes not just a politician, but a symbol of destiny. Propaganda strengthens this transformation. Control the narrative, and you control perception. Newspapers, radio, later television, and digital media. Each era has its instruments. Messages are repeated until they feel like truth. Doubt is reframed as betrayal. Critics are labeled enemies. Gradually, the public sphere narrows. Alternative voices become harder to hear. Reality itself becomes contested terrain. But dictators do not seize power alone. They rely on enablers, business leaders, politicians, military officers, judges. Some support the rising strongman out of shared ideology. Others believe they can manage him, contain him, use him for their own ends. In 1933, when Hitler was appointed chancellor, many conservative elites believed he would be controlled within the existing framework. Instead, he moved swiftly. Emergency decrees expanded executive authority. Civil liberties were suspended. Political opponents were silenced. What began as a legal appointment evolved into total domination. This gradual dismantling of institutions is critical. Democracies rarely die overnight. They erode. Courts are packed or intimidated. Legislatures are sidelined. Independent media is discredited. Electoral rules are adjusted. Each step is justified as temporary, necessary, patriotic. By the time the system is fundamentally altered, the change feels almost incremental. The public adapts to each new normal. Fear is another essential instrument. Secret police, surveillance networks, and informants create an atmosphere where dissent feels dangerous. Even if repression is not constant, the possibility of it shapes behavior. People censor themselves. Opposition fragments. Courage becomes costly. At the same time, scapegoats are identified. Minorities, immigrants, political rivals. Someone must embody the nation's problems. This us versus them narrative unifies supporters while isolating critics. Economic control often follows political control. Once in power, dictators centralize authority over resources. Contracts reward loyalists. Opponents are excluded from opportunity. Dependency grows. The regime becomes not just a political structure, but an economic ecosystem. Loyalty is incentivized. Resistance is punished. Not all dictators rise through elections. Some arrive through coups. In moments of instability, segments of the military may claim that civilian leadership has failed. Tanks roll into capitals. Constitutions are suspended. Order is promised in exchange for freedom. Even in these cases, however, the justification is similar. Chaos demands strength. Yes, so the language of necessity replaces the language of rights. What makes the rise of a dictator especially dangerous is how ordinary it can appear at first. The rhetoric is framed as patriotic. The policies are presented as protective. The erosion of checks and balances is explained as efficiency. Many citizens do not initially perceive the long-term cost. They see only immediate relief, stability, jobs, national pride. History shows that once consolidated authoritarian power is difficult to reverse. Opposition movements face repression. Information is tightly managed. Elections, if they occur, are controlled. Over time, the leader's image is mythologized. Portraits hang in public spaces. Speeches are quoted like scripture. The leader becomes inseparable from the state itself. Yet no dictatorship is invincible. And many fall because of external defeat, internal dissent, economic failure, or generational change. But their rise leaves lasting scars. Institutions weakened during authoritarian rule do not instantly recover. Trust, once broken, is not easily restored. So when we examine every dictator's rise to power, we are not studying isolated villains. We are studying patterns, political, psychological, institutional. We are studying how fear can override caution, how crisis can justify concentration of authority, how ambition can feed on instability. Dictators exploit vulnerability. They thrive where systems are fragile and societies are divided. The lesson woven through history is unsettling but clear. The path to tyranny is rarely hidden. It is often visible in plain sight, paved with applause, justified by urgency, and accelerated by those who believe they are choosing security over uncertainty. Understanding that pattern does not just explain the past, it sharpens our awareness of the present. Because dictators do not simply appear. They are enabled, normalized, and empowered, step by step, until the system that created them no longer has the strength to contain them.